I don't think people necessarily understand the amount of work that goes into these complete vehicle build type scenarios. And I say that just because, like, at least when you look at one of our engine bays, you know, we oftentimes people will say like, oh, it looks really stock or this and that. And that's great. And I mean, that's kind of what we're going for. That also takes a lot of effort, right? That takes a lot of time. That makes it hard to work on. It's not, you know, super serviceable like that. And then underneath the car is wild in like how much is crammed in kind of thing. My honest gut is that people don't understand the hours that takes. So for people that have turned wrenches on their own, that have built cars and done it, like even sometimes they might not necessarily get it because in their mind it's like, oh, we have to run this one fuel line from the front of the car to the back of the car. Okay, cool. They may not understand or look at it in the way that we are about, at least in this like OE style build layout. Like, okay, well, it needs to stay away from this because if we need to pull the transmission down, we need to not have to remove the fuel lines, or we need to have access to this piece over here, or this heat shield needs to still remain. We can't just take stuff and rip it off the car and throw it in the dumpster, and like all that stuff has to stay. It's just different. And I mean, I know our customers that get the cars definitely understand it when they see it. But I do think there's maybe a lack of awareness of just how many hours have to go into the car in total. That's not just speaking to us either. Like,
well, because what you guys do is OEM plus in a way.
I think
like,
so, yeah.
It keeps all the OEM stuff. You don't just gut a Viper and you make it a shitbox, and you put turbos on it because you could do that. That's not difficult, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. If you just want to race it like Ned, you know, if his orange Viper, it was just a drag car.
Yeah.
He gutted it. He raced it. That's what he wanted to do.
Right.
There's no need to keep all the factory stuff.
No, he was smarter about it than the way we went with really a lot of it, right? Like,
but if you want to like have an actual street car that does make 1,800 to 2,500 horsepower on a street car, you're gonna want the AC in your Viper still.
Yeah. Well, and that's the customer expectation thing, right? Like where like those expectations keep going up, and we're our own worst enemy with that, right? Like we keep pushing the bar of what's possible before those things are not there. So, you know, like now we've been 670s with a car that has all of that stuff in the car.
Yeah,
right?
what, 3,800 pounds?
4,020 with me in it.
It's crazy that a Viper is that heavy. I guess I know you added stuff, but it is still insanely heavy. Yeah,
they're heavy cars. I mean, so they're 3,300 to 3,400 pounds dry, like normally, nothing, right? So put 180 to 200 pound driver in the car, put 100 pounds of roll cage in the car, put 200 and something pounds of turbos and intercooler in the car, put 50 to 70 pounds of plumbing materials in it, so on and so forth. Now put fluids in it. It's not that hard to get there.
Yeah, you haven't subtracted anything off of the car at
all. No.
Just added a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's really not that hard to get there. I get it. It looks crazy when you look at the number, but that's not that abnormal.
Well, you made the mistake of adding safety. A lot of the supercar guys don't do that.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't. I should be careful with this. It doesn't have enough, right?
They never do.
No.
There's no car that does have enough safety.
No, that's probably the right way to answer that. Yeah. We've kind of it's that car in particular, Kratos, that I'm talking about. It's just like
the silver with the red and black stripe.
Just a red stripe, just a single red driver stripe on it. Yeah. You know, that car is, I think that is pushing the envelope at this point of kind of like just how quick and fast can you go with like minimal compromise. And I get nervous because like in my head I was about to start saying like, you know, street car stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's obviously a hot topic of debate, right? Look at you lined up. You're like, all right, hold on, let's get ready here.
Oh, God. Everybody loves the street car stuff.
So, all right.
The windows go up and down. It's got AC. That car, I will say, I think is peak true street car. Because there's street car and then there's true street car where my wife wouldn't realize if she got in the passenger seat that it was what it was. Brett's car is awesome, but he knows it's so different than that.
Oh, no doubt.
And what it does is very different than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brett, I got a bell for him.
Oh, that's perfect. I was going to say, actually, that's great. I'm really excited about that. Okay, that's beautiful. No, we can hit on that. I was going to toss this one up and let you take a swing at it.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this. Is streetcar... It's hard, of course, the question is where do you draw the line, right? What about the idea of like, if you have to physically change parts on the car for it to go from like, I'm going to drive the car to I'm going to race the car. Is that maybe like the clear defining line? Because to me, like, I think it's really cool if a guy can roll into the lanes and like tire pressure, shock, go. Like, that's neat. I'm not taking anything away. I'm not discounting what people are doing in the drag and drive stuff where they're, changing out different shocks or valve springs or this or that, all that stuff. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just asking, is that maybe like one of these places where you can look at it and say like, man, that things change once you're like doing it that way.
Well, that is why I said, Kratos is the baddest like true streetcar. Like
that's a really bold statement.
I mean, for me, I can say it. You saying it would probably sound a little different, but from me, like the outside, like obviously Brett LaSala's car, the baddest streetcar. It's got an air to water intercooler or air to air intercooler. He can put, I don't know how many gallons. He's got like a 10-gallon cell in the back. Like he's got water still through the block. It's the baddest streetcar, but then
and does drive it
for sure. But the windows don't go up and down. Like, it's got Lexan everywhere. It's got skinnies all over that are tucked, like the skinnies are tucked in and stuff. And then you look at the way that Kratos sits, where it's got the R-888s on the front, right?
Yeah, it's got a 19.
Yeah, it's got a 19-inch tire up front, still has AC.
15-inch carbon ceramic brakes.
Yeah, so that's where I like, draw the distinction of like, if you were really gonna fool someone, of like you park them over there and you're like, which one's the street car, which one's like the race car, you always will look at Kratos and be like, oh, that's a real street car.
I think so. Yeah. Like it doesn't.
Like you can fool a cop.
Yeah. There are no, like when we goes to the racetrack, like it's, and I wasn't posturing this because this is the way that car is. Like I mean that wholeheartedly. That car, you set shocks on it, we do tire pressure. That's that. Like we don't like you don't have to fog the motor after it's been running. You're not changing out injectors or engine parts or this. Like nothing is changing. There's no valves to turn. Like you just get in it and like pull the pins on the chute and ready to go.
I will say though, Brett's old car may actually be equally level of one of the baddest street cars.
Yeah, no doubt.
To not take anything away from the new car, but to remind everyone, his old car, Snot Rocket 1.0, is still out at TX2K.
Yes.
Sits like an OEM car.
Yep.
And also goes 680s at 200.
Has it? Yeah, I actually haven't paid attention.
Not
to
in the new build, but it did before. So it could do it again.
Yeah, sure.
Type of thing. So just to add.
I think one of the things that it was interesting. I found it very interesting at 2K. So for those that are unaware, yes, like this Viper we're talking about, we ran in the roll race, which I get it. We'll talk about that. But we ran in the roll race and did very well. And then we also entered in a streetcar class, which knowingly has Brett in there with us, right? So like I know we don't that car can't run with Brett. Like I know that. What was interesting to me was how many people came to the pit and asked, like almost verbatim. It was like there was a handout card somewhere, and they'd be like, "Man, do you think it's really fair that Brett's in the same class with your car?" And I would look at him and be like, "Yeah, like we're the dumb ones. Like the car's totally legal to do exactly what he's doing." They're like, "Well, it's just two totally different cars." It's like, okay, like like that doesn't change anything. Like it was hilarious, and I was hoping to like shed some light to those people at that point. Be like, hey, step back from this for a second. Like this isn't like. I get along great with those guys and love them and have all the admiration and respect for what they've been doing and whatnot. And we're had a good time there, hanging out a bit on the wall, watching racing. And but we make the choice to enter that car into a place that it is absolutely outgunned. Like that's okay. That doesn't mean that they are in the wrong. We're in the wrong. We're the dumb ones. And we just have to deal with it, and therefore we can't complain about it either.
I will say the class rules, I think they could add a 28-inch tire class like they are doing at the reunion, where it pulls a lot of those guys out of streetcar.
Yeah.
It pulls like that top 8 almost out of streetcar and tries to put them into a different class.
Well, it's interesting what is going on with that right now, right? Florida 2K is a good example for streetcar class in Florida 2K. So they made rule changes to that, or I guess Reunion follows like the same class organization, right?
Yeah, like the people like Garrett, the people like Brett, Brian Cummins, those guys, they end up going into 28s because they pay a little more.
Yep.
It's a little bit more competitive, and it just kind of slows down streetcar a little bit.
Yep. And so when that rule change happened, that in specific, and the rule change was 8 cylinders could only have a T4 turbine side maximum in a twin configuration. Well, that we're over 8 cylinders, and the big stuff has not T4s on it. So that ruled out basically anybody that was trying to go 6s, unless, of course, you had a Coyote that is a small engine with a bunch of good airflow that could work on some larger T4 footprints. So, but nevertheless,
the Coyotes can get away with the T4.
They could. Now, nevertheless, the concept. Because I asked Vic for clarity because we have V-band turbine housings, and I kind of was like, well, I don't know, they're not T4, but it couldn't be those guys. But the concept was let's separate out and try to get that class to come back to where a mid-7 car was kind of a real frontline competitive car. At least that's the way I looked at that.
Yeah.
That's fine. What I didn't understand is why was there not just even if it was voluntary, even if it was a buy-in position for like a elite or a top or a whatever, whatever you wanted to put some fancy verbiage to it, that the guys that did want to try to meet by those class rules that existed, that were there, but were wanting to go 6s, like they all went into a separate class at that point. I don't really know why that didn't go that way.
Like almost like an Elite 8 from the stick.
Precisely.
From the streetcar.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of 16, 16, 16, you do 8, 16, 16.
Precisely. Because how many cars were going to be that fast anyways? Like it wasn't going to be 16.
And it's nice because it takes one pass off those guys.
Yeah, so that's why I thought that was maybe a way that could have gone, that would have kept the drive there. Because like once you go into Extreme 28, and again, remember we're the dumb ones, right? So yes, we run a 315 tire on the car, not on Juggernaut or Kratos, the 2 Vipers that people probably seen from us drag racing, not because we just would never be able to make a 275 work. It's a gearing thing. Like we don't have a bunch of RPM to work with like a lot of these other engines. We got a tugboat engine, and so it's just beneficial to us in that regard. You can't really get into crazy low numerical ring and pinion sets when they're strong enough to deal with what we're trying to do in the heavy cars, blah, blah, blah. Those are all our problems, right? I understand that. That's okay. I'm just acknowledging that, I'm not complaining about it. It's just the situation that we're in. So we would have to go on a 28, and then we would be a 3,800 to 4,000 pound 28-inch 275 radial car that doesn't have enough gearing to make it out the back anymore now anyways in quarter-mile stuff, and we're on less tire, and we're running against stuff that legitimately is fast, small tire stuff. For us, that doesn't make sense to it's just a waste of everyone else's time at that point. For us to try to jump in there and do that.
Yeah. And your car, a lot of the difference that I see is it's a marketing car as well.
Yeah, sure.
Like Brett has no need to build a car like that because he's not trying to sell anybody kind of that type of car. Like you're using that to showcase what you do.
What you can do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like apples to oranges
there.
Totally. like your car to show customers what you're kind of getting involved with is so great. And if it was a full-blown race car, people would be like, well, I'm not really, that's not what my car is going to be like at all.
Applicable. Yeah, right. Much less applicable.
It's not going to sit like that. It's not going to look like that.
And that's not race organizers' problem to deal with, right? Like that's our choice of like how those cars are positioned. But I guess I didn't necessarily know why. Would it not have been equally as exciting for the fans and for the racers and for everyone if there was just this elite class type thing? You know, when the Gainesville Florida 2K run, when they did that group up with Prospero and those guys, and that was like the opt-in thing where it was like, you know, grabbing some from stick shift, grabbing some from streetcar, grabbing some from here, everybody can toss in and do this like really gangster shootout. Like that was exciting. That was awesome. Yeah. I felt like something could have been done similarly, and the fast guys out of streetcar would have migrated into there or just automatically, like you said, make it a field of 8 and then, you know, roll it down there.
Well, even at TX2K, that 2J class took a lot of cool cars that could be in a 28-inch tire shootout.
Yeah, right.
Like White Rice is coming to Reunion to shoot out with Brett and you know, Larry with the orange car, Victor with his other car. It brings in not just street cars. Yep. So then now, you know, Brett looks like the idiot because he's the guy with the alternator.
right.
And the air-to-air intercooler. So he's the one that's like...
oh, sorry.
He's the one that's now in the wrong class because he's got probably 400 pounds on
some of those guys,
a bunch of those cars in that class.
Yep.
I know White Rice is heavy, but like, you know, it's a class legal car, so they can change the turbos and stuff. But now he's the heavy guy in that class, which is kind of funny. But he could step into street car, but he decides to go run with the faster cars, which not everybody would do. A lot of people would.
You got to give him a lot of credit for that, right?
Yeah. A lot of people would come beat up on the street car guys. Why not?
Yeah. Yep.
But then also, you know, if something happens and you lose in street car, you're also fast car that lost.
And is that not where things started to like? And I'm probably sound grouchy, but like when the street car races started getting away from doing the cruises and stopped, like when that stuff stopped, like it just made it so much easier for cars that fit the rules, but like just were, you know, aggressive versions of it kind of thing. It just made that easier and easier and easier. And so I don't know. I think there's
the disparity walked away a lot, like the top cars to the bottom cars.
Yeah, right.
But then I always worry, like you do a street cruise and like, you know, the middle lower 10 people that have like low budgets, kind of, you know, like they're doing it themselves. Those guys end up not making it. And then you're like, oh, well, you know, the fast guys all made it. But then like the middle of the pack guys kind of didn't make it.
Yeah. And I don't envy the position for event organizers at all about trying to figure out like how can it be, you know, the most encompassing for everyone to have a good chance at having fun. I see that as challenging, no doubt.
For sure.
And there's a lot of people
I don't want that job.
No. And there's a lot of people, like the people that were coming up at 2K, right? There's a lot of people that can't accept the fact that like it's not always going to work out in your favor. Like you're going to, you get in where you fit in type thing, right? Like you just deal with it and you race where you can and you choose to do it or you don't choose to do it, you know?
I chose not to drive to TX2K for, you know, index racing and getting stuck in B group.
Yeah.
You know, like I love heads up drag racing, but like heading out there and they're like, you can't go faster than, you know, 770. I'm like, well, then like that kind of like defeats a little bit of the fun.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, just as fast index class at that point.
Yeah. Yep.
And once you kind of get on your dial in, you're just driving the car.
That's not for me. Yeah.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Bogetti Clips YouTube channel. For the full podcast, check us out on Bogetti Studios YouTube and all your audio platforms. Also, hit that subscribe button to not miss out on any of the new Bogetti Clips coming up.